Hello and welcome to the Brass Junkies. I'm your host, Andrew Hitz, and I am joined by my disturbingly talented host, Lance LaDuke. Lance, how are you?
I'm somewhat flattered by that introduction. You've put me on my heels. I appreciate it.
If you would like to know where I am at mentally in the middle of this pandemic, combined between the Brass Junkies and the Entrepreneurial Musician, I am coming up on 400 episodes. 3 days ago, I recorded TEM 217, did the whole thing, went to hit stop, realized I never hit record. I then went upstairs, ate a bowl of cereal, came back down, cleared my head. It's like 11:30 p.m. at this point. I then recorded the whole thing. It was great. 2 days later, I get an email from the producer, our partner at Petalone Media, Will Houchin, says, there's a problem. There's no audio. Turns out that my mic wasn't turned on. So, so then I had to do it a third time. So just now I was like checking all the cables. I mean, it's like our second episode again. So I think that if you can't hear me, Lance is laughing at the right times. So anyway.
I just read lips. Like there's no audio coming. I just know what you're saying.
Oh, boy. Anyway. We have a pretty special guest today, huh?
How about that? Man, that was really cool. I didn't know him, and it felt like we were fast friends. Like just sort of, I don't know if he would say the same thing.
Those are Lance's words, not his.
Yeah. He's my best friend now.
Yes, we are now very tight with Tom Hooten. No, and he and I have so many mutual friends that it felt like I knew him already because I'd heard so many stories, and I'm friends with his wife, who of course is incredible, and we have interviewed previously, which linked to in the show notes. But yeah, Tom Hooten, amazing, really fascinating how he's spending this time during his time off from the LA Phil. We won't spoil it, but really good stuff.
An incredible for I don't know how old he is. He's not that old, but an amazing pedagogue. Like just deep thoughts on teaching and how to approach individual students and how to look at problems. Like really, really, really heavy, heady stuff in a good way.
Yeah. So. Speaking of Tom Hooten, we have a big major announcement to make.
What?
That's right.
Saved a bunch of money on your car insurance by... Oh, no, it's a different
thing. The Brass Junkies is proud to present our 2020 Trumpet Workshop, which is Saturday, September 12th. And it is not as impressive a lineup as we were hoping to get, but it's pretty good. Tom Hooten is one of the guests. Billy Hunter, who is the principal trumpet of the Metropolitan Opera. Tom Hooten, of course, is the principal trumpet of the LA Phil. Chris Martin, who is the principal trumpet of the New York Philharmonic. Mary Bowden, who is the founder and lead trumpet of Seraph Brass and international trumpet soloist. And some guy named Michael Sachs, who is the principal trumpet of a little orchestra in Cleveland. That is our lineup. Tom Hooten, Billy Hunter, Chris Martin, Mary Bowden, and Michael Sachs. It's pretty cool to get to do what we do. That is going to be fun.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Mary is going to lead a warm-up class, which I think is really going to be exciting. So you're going to get a chance to play. And then you are actually going to have the chance, all participants are going to have the chance to submit questions ahead of time for Billy, for Chris, and for Michael. And then Tom is actually going to do something I'm very excited about. There is something called Winning the Audition, which we've been working on for a couple of years behind the scene. And Tom, behind the scenes, I don't think it's...
We just have one scene. Okay.
We're low brass players. We can only handle...
It's right just behind it.
Yeah. We thought about a second scene at one point, and we were like, we're a hot mess on you can't even hit record there, professional podcaster. So this behind the scene... we are going to take an hour with Tom, and he is going to describe in detail his preparation for winning the Marine Band audition, the Atlanta Symphony audition, the principal trumpet of the LA Phil audition. And then we are also going to hear from him exactly what those auditions constituted, like when he showed up, what the number was, just to kind of put us behind the scenes of being at these high-pressure auditions. And so, yeah, Billy Hunter, Tom Hooten, Chris Martin, Mary Bowden, Michael Sachs. The link is in the show notes to be able to go and check that out. It's going to be a part of Pedal Note Media Academy. Really good stuff. So I wanted to remind everybody that there is a YouTube channel now, which we went from like 0 to like 130 subscribers, 140 subscribers in like a week and a half or something, which is awesome. Thank you very much. We're pushing forward. We're trying to get to 10,000 so we can sell merch on YouTube. So if you could just tell, like 80 of your friends, that still doesn't get us there, does it? Anyway, and also thank you to everybody who has gone to patreon.com/thebrassjunkies to hear bonus episodes with every guest and a bunch of other stuff. So, Lance, I would ask you how you're doing, but I don't think anybody really cares.
I'm good.
And with that, let's get to our conversation with the principal trumpet of the LA Philharmonic, Tom Hooten. Today, we are joined by one of the best trumpet players in the world. We always introduce every trumpet player that way, and every once in a while, it's actually true. And today it is Tom Hooten of the LA Philharmonic. Tom, how are you?
Good. How are y'all doing?
We're doing well. What's it like being one of the best trumpet players in the world? Those were Tom's words, by the way, in the
Right.
pre-show.
Did he say that?
This is how I
Did he
want to be
sell it? I mean,
introduced.
we had like that practice session, but
He was,
I thought he sold it.
he was signing all of his emails to me that way, which I
Right.
thought was
Yeah.
forward, but it's like he owns it.
Yeah. With deity and extra. What is that? What is Maui from Moana? He's a demigod. Yeah. Right.
Trumpet demigod Tom Hooten joins us on our little podcast. Yep,
Yeah.
there you go. Oh goodness. No, this is the first time that Tom and I have met. We have lots and lots and lots of mutual friends, including his wife, who is a former guest, who is an unbelievable trumpet player in her own right. And I told him that I was already irritated because everyone says how unbelievably humble and down to earth he is, and and
Just
here he
ask
is.
him.
Yeah, just ask
Except
him.
for my wife, she won't say that.
No. Let me be clear. Jen did not say those words. Yeah, it was a bunch of other people. Yeah, so she might actually. I bet she believes that, but I'm sure she wouldn't say it. So
She's Sicilian Irish, so
I like the hand gesture. Yep, move along.
Yeah.
I like that you're calling us from your bunker.
Yeah.
Yes.
This explanation.
This is my trumpet bunker.
Trumpet
Right.
bunker.
And the thing over here, this is my son hand knitted this, and he's 7, so that's And then here is a list of to-dos.
My enemies. I mean, to-dos.
Right. You
Same
guys are only
thing.
like 12.
Potato. Yes.
Yeah. I got my little trumpet wall here that I've installed, so easy access to sort of. If I get called for a session, I can be ready within seconds.
It's like the Bat Cave.
Yeah.
You got
Bat
Is
cave.
there a pole down
I was
there?
just gonna say, do you have to slide down a pole to get in there? That would be awesome.
Doesn't have
There's
to,
an
but
eject button.
for
I have it
style.
on my seat. If I hit too many notes out of tune, I just eject out to the garbage bin.
And so this is a part of your house, right? You've like built this whole this practice space.
Yeah, I was telling Lance before this. This literally was this. I live on pretty relatively steep hill up here in foothills of LA, and we didn't know this when we moved in. We looked under, and there's massive crawl space. So since we have 2 trumpet players in the house and we have young kids, it's like we didn't really want to be rotating the practice room, because if somebody had to be watching the children, or at night when we both practice. So this was amazing. We built this soundproof bunker down here, and it's great. So this allows me to practice whenever I can, which is usually in this COVID situation is like 9 to midnight, every night. That's kind of the way it is.
Isn't it kind of crazy how everything's been canceled and yet there's less time when you got kids home and like nobody leaves?
I don't know. Do you all have kids?
I have a kid. Lance's just went to college, like literally a few days ago. If we talk long enough about it, he'll start crying, which will be awkward and cool. Because he's sad about it. But my kid, my wife is doing meetings. She's a middle school band director, and she's
Oh,
actually
wow.
2 floors up right now doing meetings. And my kid is on the first floor. He can't interrupt her, and I said, please don't interrupt me, but he might interrupt me. So yeah,
Totally fine.
it's
How
all
old is he?
COVID. He is 6.
Okay.
Yeah, totally. Before I would have gotten a babysitter for like
Right.
this, hour and a
I
half.
know.
You just have a friend come over and play with him, whatever. But like that's kind of, that's not really. So,
I know.
so we'll
It's
see.
really tough.
Yep, it is. It is. He bust in. You be in good company. He's only busted in during one interview, and that was Sam Palafian's interview. So,
Oh,
and there actually was a babysitter here who came running after him with
well,
the.
that's good.
Yeah, that was really good. So, so he never got to meet Sam, but Sam did say hello to him, which you'll be able to hear someday because Sam heard him.
Oh,
But yeah, anyway. All right. So
Our
before,
tolerance for that, those interruptions, all that have gone up exponent. Like it would have been just total embarrassment and shunning a year ago if that had happened. Now it's like, oh, sorry,
yeah,
man. Yeah,
yeah. It's like the
that's
reality.
my
I mean,
cat. That's not my cat, but it is a cat.
that's not my dog, but it's like a coyote. But don't
Yeah.
worry about that. Which I was in the pool yesterday. We have a neighbor that's got a pool, and I literally looked over the fence. I'm not kidding. This was literally yesterday, and this was in my like. That was over the fence. Well, you can't. I guess it's a little harder to see, but it's a little coyote in there.
wow.
Whoa.
He did not. He was not scared by me at all.
Well,
He's like,
that's weird.
what? He was like the he was like the wolf in Shrek.
He's
What?
he was in a stare down with a trumpet demigod, and he didn't even blink. That's a badass coyote.
Yeah,
I can tell you have a little kid because now 2 of your references have been to Disney movies.
yeah. Oh man,
I
there's
guess
a lot
Shrek
more
is
where
more.
that
It's not
comes from.
Dreamland. Yeah, DreamWorks, but
Thank you, Disney.
So, talk to us about your practicing. We were talking a little bit about this before we started, like in this COVID situation,
Yeah.
that you've used this actually as a little bit of an opportunity.
Oh man, it's been amazing. It's an amazing opportunity, and this kind of parallel to my normal mindset. Uh, I'm always thinking of ways to try to get better and improve and try to take nothing for granted. But, in the normal scheme of things with the normal schedule, the LA Phil, USC, doing some recordings, um, I kind of had, sort of figured out like, okay, I have an idea of how to stay balanced and disciplined about doing my job well and staying flexible and with a moderate size of growth in there, like experimentation and stuff. But usually that can't be that big because you don't want to rock the boat too much. It just has to stay somewhat in balance. And so I kind of figured that out. I felt pretty balanced and I knew how to do that relative to my job. But all of a sudden, boom, you're not playing 4 to 5 concerts a week. You're not gigging. You're not whatever. I was like, okay, there was a while, like the second week, I was like, oh, this feels different. And then I thought, you know what? Forget this kind of ecosystem that I had before. Forget it. Like, don't even try to hold on to it. Don't try to be like a performer. I'm gonna dig in back. I'm gonna open the shop up. I'm gonna completely dig into some areas that I knew where the walls were in terms of the limit of my triple tonguing or the limit of my flexibility or like this solo I always knew I always had to work it up this certain way but I wanted to get it better, so I really dug into some of these things, um, probably deeper than people want to experiment with, honestly. Ideas of facial engagement, ideas of balance, the gait of the um, all those kinds of things and how they relate to furthering my abilities and like some of those areas I mentioned before. And that's been really exciting, slightly unnerving psychologically because you're like, well, what if I had to play? Like I heard somebody said to me the other day in this course I'm teaching online, uh, if you had to play Alpine next week, what would you do? I'm like, well, I would do what I could do, but it probably wouldn't be as easily as it normally is because I'm just not in that kind of conditioning.
Hmm.
Some things would be easier, but the actual skill of what I did at the workshop, it's like turning a tanker. That's not just going to be like, boom, oh, you got to do that now. So I'll have some prep time, but I'm kind of going with it right now. Just, I know I have probably another 5 or 6 months. We did some stuff a couple weeks ago, but it wasn't massive playing. So this to me is a silver lining. Of course, it's a horrible situation for our country in many ways, but for me personally and for us musicians that are home, I think it's a real opportunity for us to dig in and maybe get into experiment mode a little bit more, be a little bit comfortable with being uncomfortable. Some really cool things to figure out, and plus so much content to digest. That's available now. It's a beautiful thing.
Wow. Could you go a little bit into details on on one of the deep dives that you've
Sure.
done? I'm finding this fascinating.
Okay, so I mean, this part of my MO. You guys, I know you don't really know me, but part of my MO is that what I'd love to do is eliminate the difference between somebody that's got a job or has success and a student, and to say I think we're all kind of working on the same thing. Some of us have figured some stuff out, but they're the same ideas. And so one of the things, and so I'm trying to promote transparency, that I have students that come and ask me for questions, and I sent a video back to somebody yesterday, and I said, I have a really tough time with this too. I'm still working it out. Here's what I'm thinking about. So I don't have all the answers, but one thing I've been working on recently is understanding the way that there's so much that generally is talked about in terms of support. Okay, what is support? Well, you blow the air. Okay, well, how do I blow the air? Like, well, it actually, depending on your instrument, doesn't really. It's actually not a straight line. It's not like we're going. We all know, because the lips will cave into the gap between the teeth. Okay, so where does the air actually go? Well, if I think of straight, it kind of hits my top teeth. Well, okay, so that doesn't work. But it does make sense why some people have a gap, or John Faddis has a chip, and he channels that. Okay, well, how do people that don't have a gap or a chip, how do they channel it? Started looking at photos of people like Harry James, Maurice Andre, Håkan Hardenberger, Doc Severinsen, and looking at the facial structure and how things are engaged. You look at Håkan, there's much of this feels like it's like, well, I don't feel like that. I'm much more of a pull down. So started understanding what is the relationship between the bottom lip and the top lip, and where does that fit? Because one of the things that really frustrated me when I was in college is I thought, look at my bottom lip. It wants to hit my top teeth. Well, that's kind of a problem. How do I blow over my top lip? So I've really been understanding a lot more about how this works, and actually I think that the air doesn't come straight out per se. The air kind of comes from the bottom, almost like, and so understanding how the top lip engages. I know this is way down the rabbit hole, and people probably say, forget it. Put your lips together and blow. And that's fine. If it works for you, great. I mean, seriously, more power to you. But I hope it always works for you, because if it doesn't, wouldn't it be kind of cool as a NASCAR driver to understand a little bit about how carburetors work? I think it probably would make them a better driver eventually. So this idea of paralysis analysis, I don't really believe in it. I believe that the more you know is better. Of course, if you focus on it too much, of course, then all we're going to hear is what's that person doing with their lips. But I'm talking about it as a facilitator of more expression, more technique, more range, more endurance, just more to bring to your musical table. And so what I've really been discovering lately is, so if I have, my teacher was Armando Gatala, and we did a massive embouchure change when I was like 21. And so I basically started over when I was 21. It's pretty horribly traumatic. And so Gatala always talked about M, put the lips together, and it was horrible for me, horrible for months and months and months. I tried to do that, and it just felt stiff and tight. It felt unnatural. And I think, and with a million times respect for him, I have a big poster of him. He's kind of like a grandfather to me. I don't think he completely understood the situation. He knew that the lips had to be close, but he didn't understand sort of the subtlety of how the front of the lips work with the middle part of the lips. And so, to put a period on this, I'm experimenting. So if the lips come like this, it's not that the front of the lips need to be touching like that. That's too tight. It's understanding that they need to be close enough to work the middle part of the lips, which is really sort of the part that like comes together and touches. And so to get that, now I understand that this portion right here of my lip needs to be touching in here. Echo, I didn't say anything, Siri. Why are you talking to me? So I know that seems a little bit weird, but in all honesty, and I don't really care, what people think. Oh, Tom's still working on this. Yeah, I'm still experimenting, but when I actually get that interconnectionness, which I don't think I had before, I think Gatala had me thinking about all close in the front, which was debilitating and tight. Now I understand that this interconnection, which is kind of how Maurice Andre played, he kind of really thought about the inner part coming apart and coming together while maintaining this it's hard to do. It's like that on the inside. And it really makes sense of how these other people structure their face. If you look at Doc Severinsen, you look at Harry James, they maybe didn't understand exactly how to explain it, but that's what they were doing, and that's why all this facial engagement looked the way it did. At least that's what I'm thinking now, and I'm super excited about it because I'm able to do things I've never been able to do before.
As an aside, I keep a running list of, we call them Easter eggs because they're more like Easter eggs than actual show notes, but I meant to write lip placement, and I butchered the spelling enough that it auto-corrected to lip pavement. So I thought, it felt like that sometimes.
For sure.
So what is it that you can do now with this new setup that you couldn't do before, or what can you do better?
Well, it's the ability to not be reaching for notes. The other thing is my triple tonguing. I feel like we've all talked about this idea of, layering ourselves. So you lay down a layer of air, which turns into sound, and that constant that you would maybe put triple tonguing on top of that, right? That it wouldn't, you don't, it's like, that.
He looks so blissed out, doesn't he? It's really beautiful. It's oh yeah, man. Triple tonguing makes me zen.
This is a new one.
It's pretty good.
Wow. It just froze.
Just
and it was like an impeccable. Sleepy. I wonder if his internet just went out.
Hanging in my
and
bunker.
I'm back.
Oh,
hey.
That was. We just kept on talking.
You look so blissful.
The worst freeze frame to ever be on.
I disagree.
Ever. Yeah, I forgot to mention this. Every day, and I'm not kidding, every day at 11:30 and 45 seconds, my internet goes out for 10 seconds, and then it comes right back. And I cannot figure out why. I'm not kidding.
And now I'm trying to figure out whether you're making this up, but you seem pretty genuine. That's like for 10 seconds at the same time every day.
Every day. In fact, I started setting a timer that when I would teach, it would go on 1 minute before, so I don't get interrupted. I don't know why it does it. I got the new computer, the Mac Mini, and it started happening with that. So I don't know.
Well, in the show notes it says frozen internet or super mellow.
I think maybe Maybe Jen's upstairs like mining bitcoins or something. Maybe like the
Yeah.
Bitcoin miner resets at the same time. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
now I have a Russian troll bot, sort of infecting my computer. Anyway, all I was saying is that I feel like now that I have control over this inner, or no, I don't have control, I have awareness of it, that it makes a lot more sense of how to engage on a sort of complete level. It's a little hard to explain because I'm stepping into it, but I'm really excited that um, I can create. Now, when we talk, to put a period on it, when I was talking about blowing through the trumpet, having consistency, really what we're looking for is that resistance point. And so many people experience this in different places relative to how well they can manage this. If somebody tends to be open, they're going to want to find a reflection point much deeper into the instrument. If somebody's particularly tight, or more tight than that other person, or more small, then their reflection point feels closer, and they're not really balanced with the instrument. So somewhere in the middle is the sweet spot to where you can deeply engage where the instrument responds quickly, but also be able to rein it in for small, fast, technical things like triple tonguing, or if you're trying to get over the instrument really fast, like you want to be able to hold this here and not be subjected to, like, I have to go super deep into the instrument, and then it kind of sounds like I'm overblowing everything.
Wow.
Are you this analytical? This sounds like a slam. I don't mean it to. Are you this analytical? Do you bring this level of analysis to everything?
No, you can't. This will completely debilitate many people. And in the last 5 or so years, since I've become a little bit more aware of these things, I have to pick what is appropriate for each student in terms of their digestibility. And sometimes I don't even talk about it. We just say, or I might say, here's what I'm trying to achieve, period. Let's do these exercises, especially for like undergrads, young grad students that maybe are still trying to figure out some fundamental technique stuff. I've learned through trial and error that some people get like, oh my gosh, like they start thinking about this stuff, and I try to pull into teaching, understanding each person's awareness of like tactile things, and like, you know, you say, hey, what kind of hobbies do you have? And if they say, well, I love video games and I like math, and you're like, okay, well, we're not going to talk about kinetic energy because like that's kind of off your radar. It's not bad. It's just, let's talk about it from a different standpoint. Otherwise, if somebody says, I love sports, I'm really into running, then okay, let's use some analogies around balance, and running and gait and all these things, and try to bring all these different sort of experiences that people have. That's something I love to do, is to extrapolate from different things, whether it's physics or mathematics or exercising, and because we can relate all of those things to our musical journey, and our understanding of the physicality and the nuance of trumpet playing. But you're right. If you talk about it this one way with everybody, the eyes roll back in their head and they're like super confused.
Well, you've identified, it's multi-phase process where you're dealing with minutia, and you're analyzing and prescribing for yourself a way to do a thing. And then once you have come to some conclusions or hunches about how that thing works and how it works for you, then there's the matter of like, if it's only for you, it doesn't make any difference. But if you're going to try and communicate that, then that's when the rubber meets that's when you have lip pavement. And so then you have to sort of, how would you say that your ability to communicate with your students has evolved over time?
Well,
analogy is one, obviously.
Yeah, for sure. I love talking in analogies, but the way I start each relationship with the student is to really listen to them, to really understand what have their experiences. What is their experience of creating the context that they understand things, right? Like, so we can't just blanketly say something about, uh, oh, you know what I heard? Wayne Bergeron, he thinks of really opening up for a double C. You're like, yeah, but hold on. Let's talk about the context of him saying that. So I want to understand behind the students' eyes how they're viewing things. Like, you know, who was their teacher? What was their pedagogical background like? What have their struggles been? What have their influences been? What are their hobbies? All those kinds of things. It doesn't take a long time to find out those things and to realize, okay, I have an idea of maybe how I can relate these things to you. And sometimes it's not, you can't perfect that. I mean, but you can understand what's maybe digestible at this moment. But I'm still a proponent of, and this steps into a slightly different phase of this, but there's so many great players in the States, right? I mean, there's just gobs and gobs of players that can do amazing, amazing things, whether it's lead player, commercial playing, classical playing, whatever, brass quintet, whatever. But I do feel that culturally, from a pedagogical standpoint, there's some pretty big holes in the way we view how we improve, how we spend our time. What are we presuming is necessary for improvement, right? Or what are we presuming is not necessary? And I think, how do we relate that to other cultures, like, you know, maybe in Europe or in Asia, and not just talking about trumpet, like what are those things that are necessary? And I have to feel comfortable pressing our presumed norms about what is needed. Like, oh, I'm doing 2 hours a day, and let's be honest about that. What is that 2 hours like? And then, you know, saying, well, what do you expect to achieve from that? And so how this all ties together is that it's not enough just to introduce a concept to somebody, but to understand how long does it take to implement change. I think we have a misunderstanding of that, honestly. So that's also another piece of the puzzle that's interesting when it comes to having a longer relationship with a student, how to balance that, promote. I have this thing that I try to explain. It's a little bit abstract. I feel bad. Most of what I'm talking about is somewhat abstract, but
this is great.
But talking to someone about how do we implement change. So let's talk about practicing with the idea of one-to-one practice. That means I'm going to take one action and I'm going to try to incorporate something different into this action. So I'm going to try, let's say, a simple idea would be a wind pattern. Okay, so no problem. I'm going to try to do that with and you mess up. Try the wind pattern again, because you know intuitively the wind should be free. I should take it in easily. I should release it easily. Okay, let's get in that ballpark. Oh, God. And so people would immediately discount that, say, nope, that made it worse. It's like, no, we have to understand that change happens in at least pairs. Meaning that if here's my norm, here's my 100%, this is the best I know how to do it. I'm trying to put this into here. It's like, well, you can't buy a new couch and put it where the old one is unless you move the old couch. So it's like getting people to understand when we're trying to incorporate new habits, what is a general idea of time? Like, what can I expect that today, tomorrow, weeks, months? We're talking bigger chunks of time, and this idea of just simply understanding a concept is just not enough. We have to understand how to implement that change, and that change happens by acquiring things, acquiring knowledge, applying that, having a period of uncomfortableness, and then perhaps discarding something that we really held on to as truth. That's hard. So I don't know if
particularly when it was the thing that got you to where you are.
Exactly.
So then you have to have faith. It's like the Indiana Jones thing. You have to step off the cliff and just have faith
Exactly.
that step is going to be there.
Throw some dirt.
Throw some dirt. Yeah. Okay.
When you're a demigod, you don't have to worry about stepping off the cliff. You know it's going to work out just fine.
So let's take a moment and thank the wonderful folks at the Mary Papert School of Music at Duquesne University in beautiful and sunny Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where it is beautiful and sunny 3 to 4 days a year. You can find out about the music school at Duquesne by clicking on a link that was designed specifically and intentionally for the listeners of The Brass Junkies. So click on that and find out about who you can study with, what kinds of experiences you can have in beautiful and sunny Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And very special thanks to Jim. How about we throw some more dirt? Nova for making that possible. Look at that beautiful background and Tom's head on a platter.
So, all right, Lance, I gotta. You just said you can learn more about the music school. What were you gonna say? What word was gonna come after music?
Well, I was gonna say platypus. Dismissed it.
I was like, what?
Parsimons? Definitely not.
Is he having a stroke like during the Tom Hooten interview?
I was going to say program, but I switched to school.
He's just so excited to talk to you, Tom, that he's tongue tied.
Nice.
I can't believe how succinctly, I was told you're not that articulate, but you just put so succinctly about the change over time thing. I always use the analogy of if there's a path across the grass and then somebody puts a bench in the middle of the path and then the path has to go around the bench, that the old path is not going to fill in with grass in a week. And the new path will just be slightly trampled grass after a week. 6 months later, I don't know exactly what the time is, the path will go around the bench, and if somebody that's never been there comes, they're never going to know the path was there in the first place. But it's a long time. It's not a week or 2 weeks. And so it's like, it's all about like applied intentional effort over a prolonged and intentional period of time. And you summarize that so well. That's really good stuff.
Well, I think the other thing that makes me think about is, this, again, even if we can articulate the process, living the process is super it's super confusing.
Yeah.
Because what you just said perfectly, the prolonged and sustained application is like, yeah, but we're human beings that like change with emotions and sleep, or we have a hard week of concerts and then everything feels off, and it's really hard. In the course I was teaching, we this summer we just had Sergei Nikaryakov give a guest lecture, and it's just fascinating to hear about. I don't know if you all have talked to him or know much about
he's
him.
on the list. I saw him play at the ITG in Banff. When was that? 2008 or something. He just blew my mind.
Yeah, it's fascinating to think about what his upbringing was like. He was playing the Carnival of Venice at 10. His father, who basically was watching every note that he played until he was 20, like basically telling him how to practice. No, higher, cleaner, centered. No, take a break. Too much. Like just that kind of micromanage. Like we don't have that. Our system isn't developed like that. We have one lesson a week. And you have all these other inputs and influences and stuff in one lesson a week, and it's like, so I started getting really passionate about the bigger picture, like helping people with the mindset to stay the course, and how do we implement discipline, bringing our whole selves into the process, so that when we have doubt or when we're confused, it's like we need some resources on how to bring back that clarity, at least the confidence to go ask a question, the confidence to stop and think, as opposed to just go. It's such a complicated thing. It's what makes teaching super exciting for me, is helping people address these areas that maybe are slightly outside of what button to push or how long or short to play a note. If that's all we talk about, man, there's just so much. We it's just very limited in the effect, I think.
Tell us about the course. You've mentioned it. So, what course is it?
So this thing is called Trumpet Mastery, but I'm going to change it to How to Be a Demigod.
Ah,
So, um,
you should charge a lot more for the
Yeah.
second one.
How to be as good as you think you are.
right, right. Um, or maybe like just pay me in Bitcoin. You know?
Talk to your wife about that.
Right. No, so I've been thinking about this for a long time, and this, this pandemic. I actually, I have a coach. She's kind of like a business coach, and I have a few other mentors too. Maybe we could talk about that too later about how people maybe can bring that into their lives somehow. Anyway, so I was talking to this coach about having an on, because I was very vested in like Instagram and putting videos of out of like, here's how I practice, maybe this will be helpful for people. I wasn't doing a lot of performing videos, more like, okay, here I'm working on this, blah blah blah. And so we were thinking about creating an online course, and we were moving forward to it, but then the pandemic hit, and I was like, all right, let's just do it. And so June 1st, I started a 12-week, it's actually 13-week program. I have 23 people in it. We have weekly performance classes, a weekly lecture that I host. Sometimes I have a guest. We had Sergey or Julie Landsman or John Hagstrom, different people like that. Um, and each lecture is around a different topic. Each studio class is also themed as well. Um, and then about every 3 weeks was a lesson with me. And then the other component of this was a Facebook community group, and I gave people an open door policy to send me 30-second to like 1 minute videos, um, to try to be a resource for them in between lessons, because the truth is, like, our lessons are such a small percentage of what we're doing, and I wanted to be able to peek into the practice room of them to say, oh, no, no, hold on, you're spinning your wheels here, let me help you. And then literally 1 minute video that I make back to them seems to be like, oh, great. So I didn't spend the next 20 hours beating my head against this. Giving people a resource of my experience in that way, I feel really helped them. So that's kind of the gist of the whole course. I don't think I'm forgetting anything. Oh, and then what I started the course with was working with each individual. They send me, and this is how I teach normally private lessons. They send me a questionnaire, which is like a self-assessment of their strengths and weaknesses, their dream, 3 of their best and worst character traits, to bring this part of the conversation of like, hey, are you a big procrastinator, or you're super hardworking? All of those can play a factor into you becoming an effective and getting better. And then I have them describe the person who wins their dream job, to make sure that they're not setting themselves up with the unbelievable high expectation of using words like always and never, and this person is always prepared, this person doesn't make mistakes. And it's not true. So making their dream clear, self-assessment, and then I ask them to send me all the stuff they've been practicing, and I help them create a routine. This is probably the number one thing people struggle with on the daily basis, is like, I don't know how much time to spend on XYZ, and again, kind of like prolonged. How long do I do this before I realize this is not the right way? That's such a challenge for people, and I get it, because there's a challenge for me too. So that's kind of the gist of it. And so I'm starting one in September, much longer. It's going to be 7 months. I can't have that many people in it, but I have like about 5 more slots open. It's the same thing, but like on steroids. Like this list behind me here, those are all of the lectures that I'm planning out. And I of course, invite people to suggest lectures. The lecture I'm giving tomorrow is a culmination of all the questions that they have. It's everything from audition experience that you were talking about, Andrew, around finances, like how do I invest my money in an appropriate way? So it's really, I love it, because people are vested in this, they're open-minded, and I get to somewhat have control over the narrative about staying balanced mentally and all that kind of stuff.
It's really, I I have no doubt this is going to be a huge success for you, and it's a really incredible, valuable thing you're putting out into the world. And one of the, we could go in a million directions. The one that popped out at me was these little minute or 30-second snippets that people are sending you, and we've been in this pattern of the student sits at the feet of the master for 200 years, and you show up and you do that, and then you go away and you come back in a week. And I remember talking to Sam actually at one point, and he said that all his students had his number, and they were just like, whenever you have a breakthrough or you have something you want me to hear, just call me and I'll just come in and listen to you do that thing. And so it's like we have this weird, like, artificial next Tuesday at 3:00 is when you need to peak next. So good luck, and then I'll see you. Instead of and it's harder, it's more complex, and it requires more of the teacher for sure and the student. But with the pandemic now, all the traditional models are blown right out the window. And so, I'm getting ready to go start in a couple of weeks teaching college, and I'm still trying to iron out how I might best do this and take advantage of the fact that it's all, it's different, or, it's different.
Right.
And how might I might steal that idea, and it's just like, okay, they need to get an hour of tutelage from me that's high protein a week.
Right.
Is 60 minutes in a row on a Zoom call or in a room the best way to do that is a really, really interesting question now that would have been blasphemy to talk about a year ago. So, interesting.
Well, I think the other thing that you said that I think is what hit me back at that was this idea of, like, sit at the foot of the master. And this is what part of my passion is, like, can we throw that in the garbage? Can we just, like, it's fun to, and I don't take it so seriously that when you all say, like, oh, one of the best trumpet players, I know some people say that about other artists, and that's fine, but we can also respect, people that have achieved things or can play things or whatever, but we shouldn't delude ourselves to think that, like, all of those were inherent, and if you think about it from this happened a long time ago, I think, back in, like, 40s and 50s, when musicians would have jobs in an orchestra or maybe, like, some famous big band or something, and there was no union, there was no protection, there was no tenure, and if a conductor went and heard somebody that was a little bit better, you could have been gone. Mr. Herseth, why don't you come in here and play first? And so, like, this idea of, like, proprietary, of, like, I know how things go. I'm not really going to share them with you because I don't want you coming after my job. I think that it's not the only place, but I think it's one of these places where it's like, I have all the answers, or it's inherent. But the truth is, like, there's so much information that Bud was keeping track of. There was so much, like, what mouthpiece he used. He knew what the broadcast date was. There was so much. He was trying this. He was trying this. There's all these notes that he was doing this. But it probably wasn't in his best interest when he was a young trumpet player in Chicago to, like, just share this with everybody, because it probably wasn't in his best interest. So I hate this idea of fixed timelines. Like, you will play a recital in 3 months and it'll be ready, and it's like, that doesn't always happen like that. And it's maybe the best we have, but to allow ourselves to not be held to some arbitrary timeline that maybe works for a third of the people but doesn't work for the other 2/3 because they say, well, I'm a master's student, I can't play the Tomasi. Fine, play the Haydn. I don't know. I mean, don't. I mean, and this is tough because then I also want to say, well, push yourself. Yeah, but this is where individual conversations about this are appropriate, and these little minute check-ins are also good for another reason. It's kind of holding them accountable. It's like, hey, I haven't gotten a video from you. Oh yeah, because there's no excuse. It's 30 seconds. Show me what you're practicing. Just push record, practice, and send it to me. There's no posturing. You should not be ready for a lesson. just show me where it is.
It's just a reflection of where you're at on that day at that time, or ideally is.
And, it's the
And if
same
you
for an
screwed it
audition.
up on day one of you left the lesson and you went to the practice room and you learned something wrong, now you've reinforced it for a week until it
Right.
gets caught.
Right. The reality is you spend way more time by yourself experimenting with stuff. And if I could sort of be like over here and say like, oh no, try it like this. Okay, now go. It's sort of like, adjusting the water at the beginning of the stream. It's like, okay, well look where that goes.
Right.
You
Wow.
can't be there every second, and that's
Right.
not beneficial for the student because they're not autonomous.
Right.
But at the same time, we can make massive adjustments in 30 seconds. That down the stream make a big difference where it goes.
Boy, what I keep hearing you say over and over again is that you're teaching the student that is in front of you. I actually remember poking around on your website. Here's some good. This is why I'm a music business consultant, is because I reached out to Tom like 2 years ago. Was like, we'd love to have you on the podcast. He emailed back, be like, yeah, that'd be fun. What were you thinking? And then I emailed him back like last week. It's like I'm just like totally. I was like, yeah, there you
on
go.
the pulse.
Yeah,
You're
and then
right there.
and then we're like, maybe he thought it was like a power move. It's like, no, I'm not even going to reply to you, and we're going to interview your wife. Yeah, and then I'll get back to you like in a week. We're just trying to
I
right
see.
size you.
I
Yeah,
see how you work.
yeah. She paid me to do that, but anyway,
When the world comes to an end. Oh, Andrew, guess what? Better get Tom.
No, that you keep talking about teaching the student in front of you, and when I was on your website and I saw the questionnaire, which was really fascinating to me, you've got like this system in place to get to know the student, and you already touched on that, right? Like if you're way into video games, like, okay, that's one thing. If you're way into science, that's another, or math, or horseback riding, and so you're not even just teaching the musician, but you're specifically teaching the human being in front of you, and you're questioning a lot of assumptions, which is what I'm trying to incorporate into my own studio as well, which is just as all three of us have said in this call, it's like, why does it have to be Monday at 10 a.m. in the same place, always one-on-one, never a group lesson, always the same amount of time? We make so many assumptions of this master-apprentice model, which, like you said, works really well for a percentage of the people, but not for everybody. Wow. Awesome. Really good stuff. Well, and there's a link in the show notes if you want to try and grab one of those last few spots from Tom.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, people. I mean, if you're talking about the course,
Yeah.
My website just goes directly to my personal email. So if somebody's interested in learning more about that, the 7-month program, they can shoot me an email. I'll get right back to you.
That's awesome. And then you should email him sooner than 22 months later. So that would be my official advice as a music business consultant. Speaking of mouthpieces, which we weren't, thank you to Parker Mouthpieces for providing the hosting for the Brass Junkies. Parker Mouthpieces offers fine, customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the Andrew Hitz Artist Model tuba mouthpiece and the Lance LaDuke Model euphonium mouthpiece. Find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So I could talk to you about pedagogy all day, because you have this amazing approach to it, but also just the way that you are able to put it into words is fascinating. But I do want to talk to you a little bit about your relationship with John Williams and about the recording, and just because I think that's fascinating. So tell us about how did you and John Williams come to know each other? Did you know him before you got the job in L.A.?
No, I don't think so. No, I got the job in LA, and then he lives here. He lives really close to UCLA, and he has a relationship with the symphony. And over the last several years, that became much more in depth. We honored him in several ways, played a tour of his music, and blah blah blah. So I would see him around, and certain things happened over the, a couple years before the recording happened where, I had conversations with him. He, finally was like, hey Tom, how's it going? That kind of thing. Like, he just recognized me. And so, this whole recording thing came about from kind of just, okay. Well, it came out like this. I was thinking, what's the next step in my career? I made a piano recording with on a CD, and it's like, okay, do we even do CDs anymore? Like, I'm just throwing all these ideas out. I need to do something with an orchestra, blah, blah, blah. So I had a friend, very incredibly intelligent friend who graduated from, I think, Yale at 19 and youngest member of the LA Phil and blah, blah, blah. Super smart guy. So he said, we had this little powwow brain trust meeting and started talking about like resources for this and ideas. And he said, Tom, why don't you just record it here? And I'm like, oh, come on, man. You know how expensive that would be? Blah, blah, blah. And so he said, well, first just ask John if he'll conduct it. I'm like, are you out of your mind? Okay, sure, ha ha ha. So I sent him an email. I sent his assistant an email. He said, sure, John would be interested in this. And my jaw hit the floor and I was like, can I get back to you in a little bit?
Wait, I wasn't serious. I was just,
Yeah,
yeah.
like,
Okay,
oh,
good to
crap.
know. If I ever decide to follow through, I'll hit you up in 22 months.
Exactly. So, long story short, there was one other amazing angel that happened to this. It was the end of the season, and I was at this board event. There was young presidents, kind of getting to know young presidents of companies in LA. And this guy was sitting there with a clipboard checking people in. I kind of seen him a couple times. I didn't know anything about him. We just struck up a conversation. He's going, hey, what are you doing this summer? Blah, blah, blah. I said, well, I'm trying to put together this project. It's like I have to raise quite a bit of money and blah, blah, blah. And I just tell him kind of like my life story in 3 minutes. And I said, yeah, so I'm working on that. And so I said, I got to go to this thing. And I go away. And he strolls over like 10 minutes later with his clipboard. And I told him how much I needed to raise. It was about 6 figures. And he goes, I'll pay for half. Me? And Chris still was sitting there, and Chris goes, and I just, from right then, I was like, this is totally going to happen. And so from then I crowdfunded. I got some more other sponsors. I put this whole thing together. Super exciting, super learning experience, and all the different components that go into a recording, how much it costs, how to connect with community, I did the whole, what do you call it, the Kickstarter thing to try to bring in as many people to be part of it. I probably honestly didn't need to do that, but I probably could have gotten private donors to do that, but it was great to try to bring people in, and I really felt that from them. I felt that they liked being part of something different. It was an amazing experience. I could go on and on about it, but it was an amazing blessing to work with him and see his artistry and tap into his discipline and just a lot to soak in there.
Wow. Can we get the contact info for that clipboard guy?
Yeah, I know. Well, I'll tell you that, have you ever heard of Brighton Jewelry?
There you go.
That guy.
There you go.
Okay.
The guy.
I had no idea. I had no idea like who he was, and I think he liked that he could kind of surprise me and be like, and he said, "You're gonna have to raise the rest." And so I said, "Yeah, no problem. I'll figure it out." And then I went home that night like, oh my god. And then I thought, oh, what if he heard me say 8,000 and not 80,000 or something like that, And I was like, oh crap, hold on, I'm going to email him. I'm like, just so we're on the same page. He's like, yeah, no problem. And so
when I said I needed to raise 800,000, you were like totally cool.
Exactly.
I can't believe you agreed to 8 million.
Yeah, exactly. This guy is very generous, and he was so helpful. He helped me align with a non-for-profit funnel, like this non-for-profit sponsored it and helped
Like a
everybody's
fiscal
deductions.
sponsor kind of deal. Yeah.
Yeah, so they could
Oh, I
write
see.
off. Yeah, so it was a they call it Fulcrum Arts, which this guy kind of helps run. So he helps funnel all these projects and artists to create all these things, and he kind of funds it through this non-for-profit. So he can, why not be smart with your money? So
Wow. That's a cool story. Yeah, for the record, if he gets in touch, I can act surprised. If he if he wants to give us a bunch of money for something, I can totally act surprised. I'll take acting lessons if I need to act surprised. Whatever. We'll talk afterwards. So,
okay.
so you live in Los Angeles, and that is the same city as our dear friend Jens Lindemann.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys are. I don't know. Speaking of acting surprised, I don't know if you guys
I've heard of
are.
him. I know. Yeah, I've heard of him.
He valeted your car that one time.
He's a horn player?
He teaches horn at UCLA. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. He puts his hand in the wrong place.
I don't know if you guys are more friends or more rivals, or if you're more of a mentor to him, or I'm not sure how this works, but as you've probably heard, he's been going through some chop problems for a very long time, and you seem to be, you were talking about some heavy stuff before, like getting comfortable being uncomfortable, like, which is something I say to my students a lot. Like, you seem very very learned, and so I didn't know if maybe you could be the person that could help him with a breakthrough here. So what is your advice for Jens?
Well, I know it's tough to to go through something tough. It's tough. It's emotionally tough, and I know the crying can be hard, and and you sort of feel like the whole world has fallen out from under you. And I'm pretty passionate about this because I went through it myself. I created actually a website for comeback players. And because there's a lot of people out there that are super passionate about this, and they sort of lost their way. Mm-hmm. It's Yuakia, and so this website is I used to know it all. Trumpet.org. You're cool. So it's a great resource for somebody like Jens who maybe he used to be on top of the world, but now he has a tough time with low G.
I wrote it. So that link is in the show notes.
Yeah, it's IUTKIA.
.trumpet.org. You're cool.
Yes.
With no apostrophe. That'll break the URL. Yeah, no apostrophe. I like it. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
There's still hope.
I mean, yeah. I mean, on some days, you were talking before, I'm paraphrasing, but like progress is not linear, right? None of us are entitled to linear progress, and we'll just say that Jens is the embodiment of that. So, so he just needs to keep showing up. So, yep. He'll make that new path eventually.
Mm-hmm. Just
He's under the bench.
He is under the new bench. They built the bench on top of him. They just didn't even notice that he was passed out.
He was doing the splits and he couldn't get up, and they just put a bench on him.
Oh, I like that. This is like the meanest that we've been to him, and this is going to be one of the most listened/watched episodes we've ever had. So that's perfect. It's perfect.
Well,
so
I'm getting him back for, and I don't forget this, Jens.
Oh,
I'm
dish.
getting him back for the night at the Omni Hotel when he walked up to my table. This is the Omni Hotel. This isn't like the Best Western. So it's the Omni Hotel, and Jens goes to the waiter. I'll have a double Hennessy on the rocks for that table over there. Thanks, and put the $45 bill on my account. So I'm happy to help you with your low G problems, my friend.
Awesome.
I'm just kidding.
After we had been doing this bit at his expense for, I don't know, it was like 30 or 40 people in. I don't know if you know Kevin Gibo, who plays in DC, who's a dear friend. and I saw Jens at Kevin's wedding, and Jens came up to me, and he tried to act like he was mad, which like and I said in front of our whole table, like Phil Snedeker was watching. There was a whole bunch of brass players. And I said, Jens, we get the best brass players in the world to talk about you every episode. That's your dream. And he goes, yeah, you're right. So that was the end. He kept up the like, I'm mad at you for like, it was like a good solid 8 seconds long. And then he started laughing.
Yeah. He's going to be mad because I don't have like a roll down banner that says I heart Jens or something, you know?
Kinko's could probably get you one of those, like, yeah, pretty quickly. So, yeah, they'll deliver anything these days. So, yeah, there we go. Awesome. Well, this has been incredible. This has been really, really great. I was fascinated by your talk about, I was fascinated by the particulars of what you were talking about in terms of, like, doing the deep dives in your own playing, but just as much, if not more so, in the fact that a player of your ability level viewed in the first place this opportunity and then used it to do that kind of a deep dive, you know, when to the outside observer, like, you're Tom Hooten. I'm not trying to be funny, like, you don't need to do that, right? I mean, you sound, every time you go to the LA Phil, the lead trumpet sounds amazing. And so it's just, it's fascinating that you're doing this. And that, yeah, I think it's a great example for all of us.
Well, thanks. I mean, in a nutshell, I guess I would say that my job and my title, my position, whatever you want to call it, doesn't entitle me to anything. It doesn't entitle me to have good response or good range or good endurance. It doesn't. Yeah. And the second that I think, because I'm in that job, that I'm entitled to those things or that I'm endowed with those things,
or even the fact that you're in that job and doing it well right now. I like that point when you said, I hope that works for you, and I hope that it always works, when you were saying to somebody that doesn't do any deep dives. Yeah, that's a great attitude.
That are you know, these amazing individuals that have come out of high school doing so well, and if we just condition ourselves to say, like, hey, I turn the key, it works, great, but we're human beings. Our situations, our environment, our bodies, these things change. And sometimes it's really hard to notice when one wheel starts to get out of balance.
Right.
But you're correcting for it. You just don't know why.
Right.
And so at some point you're like, you realize, you're like, oh, well, I should just relax. It's like, oh, no. This problem has been happening a while, and now we have to understand time and correction.
Love it. Good stuff. Well, we are going to have Tom hang on here for the bonus episode, which will air 1 week after that, after this, after that, after those. You're cool. If you want access to the bonus episode with Tom, as well as a long list from Marty Hackelman, Sam Palafian, Chris Martin, a long list of people. Then go ahead, Julie Landsman, who you talked about before. Boy, did she blow our minds! Yeah. Oh my goodness, that was like, I was like fired up at the end of both her regular episode and bonus episode. You can head to patreon.com/thebrassjunkies to gain instant access to that whole back catalog. And Tom, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, great to meet you all. It's a lot of fun.
And that's going to do it for this episode of The Brass Junkies.
You've been listening to The Brass Junkies on the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network. If you would like to hear the bonus episode featuring today's guest, please visit patreon.com/thebrassjunkies to learn how you can support the show and instantly access all bonus materials, as well as gain access to a special patron-only Facebook group. The Brass Junkies is produced by the amazing, wonderful, and truly inspirational Will Houchin. The theme music was composed by Fernando Dados and performed by Andrew Hitz and Lance LaDuke. We are at Pray for Jens on Twitter and Instagram, and have a Facebook page at facebook.com/prayforjens. You can find out more about the Brass Junkies and all the other Pedal Note Media podcasts at pedalnotemedia.com. This has been a presentation of the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network.